Where do we? Who do
we
we
lost.
lose?
We lost Rosa. There she is.
If you file taxes, not just last year, but the year, maybe you look back 3 years, that would capture the great majority. I mean, of course, we don't want anything.
Thank God for covers.
We have to give up a little bit. I mean, I'm not starting with that with him because I don't.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Great. We're here today to talk about the expanded child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, which together are the biggest step to help families and working people in this country in a generation. We tripled the earned income tax credit, which meant that 17 million workers without children benefited from it, and almost every family, 90% of the families in this country, have received the benefit of the expanded child tax credit. In Colorado, that's been an average of $445 a month for families. 61 million kids in this nation have benefited, 1 million kids in Colorado. We've cut childhood poverty nearly in half in this country. We've cut hunger by 25% in the United States this year alone because of these tax policies. In my view, these are the most successful and most progressive social policies that have been passed by Congress in generations. And we have seen a substantial, as I said, substantial reduction in child poverty as a result. Families all over the country have said, for once, it's nice to see the government in Washington doing something for us. And as American families are facing higher and higher costs, facing inflation, the last thing we should be doing is cutting this child tax credit. In my view, the last thing we should be doing is doubling childhood poverty, increasing hunger in the United States by 25%. I've been around this place for long enough to see what happens when wealthy people's tax cuts expire, and they're extended as a matter of course. I've seen what happens in this place when some of the largest corporations in America have their tax cuts expire. We do everything we can to make sure that those tax cuts are extended by the end of the year, and we have not done that. And as a result of that, we're doubling the childhood poverty rate in this country, and as I said, we're increasing hunger. So I think we are here today to say that we want, as a centerpiece of any package that we pass together, any reconciliation package, that the expanded child tax credit and the expanded earned income tax credit should be part of that, must be part of that. Every single person up here thinks we should make these changes to our tax code permanent. And with that, I'll turn it over to my partner in all of this in the Senate, Sherrod Brown.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you all, and thanks to my colleagues behind me for the very, very, very crucial, important work they've done to make such a difference in people's lives. Largest tax cut for working families in our lifetimes. More than 90% of families with children in Ohio and in New Jersey and in Washington State and Connecticut and Georgia and Colorado, more than 90% of families with children under 18 have gotten at least a $3,000 a year tax cut. Think about that, at least a $3,000 a year tax cut. It's the most consequential thing we've done in this body to make people's hard work pay off, the most consequential thing in decades. We know what's happened in the last 20 years. Corporate profits are up, executive salaries skyrocket, yet wages have remained pretty much flat for most of these last 20 years. Parents know how expensive it is to raise kids, health care, school lunches, summer camps, diapers, clothes, especially child care. When we did this last year, think about this, March 6th, Raphael and Michael and Cory and I voted in the Senate, and the House was just days apart. March 6th, on a Saturday, we passed this. Every Republican voted no twice. Every Democrat voted yes twice. It passed 51-50 twice, the child tax credit. Right away, we worked with the Secretary of the Treasury. By July 15th, the president signed it in mid-March. By July 15th, people went to their mailboxes or checked their bank accounts or checking their savings accounts, and they saw this tax cut. They saw this $1,500. They saw what this $300 or $250 a month they were getting. July 15th, August 15th, September, October, November, December, making a huge difference in people's lives. And we put on our website, at the middle of every month, tell us what this means. A father in Cincinnati, first time I can buy fast pitch softball equipment for my daughter. a mother in Dayton, first time I can send my son to summer camp, people buying diapers, people buying school supplies, especially we heard about childcare. We heard so many people talking about that last week of the month. I've just tried to figure out how do I put the money together for my rent. This made it easier. This relieved the anxiety in those families that just sat on those families' lives, brought them some joy of having a little bit of margin of error in their lives, made such a difference. And now, but as Michael said, we remember what happens with Mitch McConnell's 2017 tax cuts for the wealthy. Those tax cuts are too often permanent. When they need to be renewed, they always are. But finally, we did the right thing. We cut taxes for working families. We need to make sure those tax cuts will be there for these families at this time next year. It's a pretty simple contrast. Whose side are you on? Do you want tax cuts for billionaires and corporations, or do you want major tax cuts for families, for working families in this country? I'll turn it over to my longtime friend, Rosa DeLaura, who's started this, frankly, before anybody up here. So, Rosa, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. I'm so proud to join with, I call the Child Tax Credit 6, and we're missing Richard Torres as well, or 7 here. So this is wonderful to be with you, and thank you. I would just say co-conspirators as well, because we're going to fight, and we're going to continue to fight for an expanded child tax credit. Just let me make one point about this being tax season. I want to just put in a pitch this year so that families will make sure that they are filing to get the second half of the child tax credit payment, get that in their income tax returns. And I might also add, for families who've had a newborn last year, first of all, congratulations. But they are eligible to take advantage of the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, and to be able to get the full amount for it. So I want to encourage people not to forget the second half of the child tax credit. What we're doing today is urging our colleagues to pass an immediate extension of the child tax credit. Passed the House last November. Over the last several months, it's historic tax relief to families across this country. The stories we've heard from families all over, what they have done. We can read stories all day. On the floor of the House, on the floor of the Senate, we could go more than the 8 hours that the Speaker spoke when she did so many months ago on the stories of folks utilizing the child tax credit: food, child care, diapers, health care, clothing, security, because these are families who are middle-class families, low-income families. It's been a lifeline for them, and it's paycheck to paycheck. And maybe some folks here don't understand paycheck to paycheck, but our families across this country understand that. And you know, families of up to 60 million children have been receiving the monthly per-child payment, helping them to stay ahead of inflation. We're worried about inflation, but this helps to lower the costs of food, of rent, utilities, and of child care so that people can work. And which is why I am proud. Like, I want to give you, Senator Brown started to mention this. January in the American Rescue Plan. March it passes. July, month to month. Now, folks have been around here a long time. How many federal programs have we seen that have achieved their goal, who have made the difference that it was anticipated to make in the lives of families in the shortest period of time? Lifting almost 50% of kids out of poverty, dropping the hunger rate, providing people with the opportunity to have some economic security in their lives for the first time. And now why would we want to pull that rug out from under them and say, you know, you're now again on your own? It is a cruel hoax. That's not what we should be engaged in. And I don't know if anybody has read there's a great article, and it was penned by James Roosevelt, the sons, the grandsons, the granddaughters of the folks who are engaged in Social Security. I would imagine that Social Security had difficulty being birthed and so forth, but now would anybody do it in? Not on your life. The Affordable Care Act took a long time for people to realize what it meant to them, and it's not about to be turned around. And the child tax credit, in the shortest period of time, has demonstrated its success. It should not be left behind. It should be at the center of whatever we are doing in terms of a reconciliation package in the future. And with that, let me introduce Congresswoman Susan Del Bene, again, a co-conspirator. Susan?
Thanks, Rosa. Thank you. It's great to be up here with all of these strong champions for the expanded child tax credit. And it's really important that we think of how far we've come, because this issue has been an issue that folks have been working on for a long, long time, but no one longer than Congresswoman DeLauro, who started in 2003 pushing forward and has really led to the success that we had. And that we can still have. When President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan into law last year, there was a lot of promise for the child tax credit. And one thing that we have now, which we don't have often on a lot of pieces of policy, is we have results, tangible, demonstrable results. In just 6 months, 3.7 million kids were lifted out of poverty across the country because of the expanded child tax credit. 36 million families were receiving child tax credit payments. As folks said, nearly 90% of all families across the country, middle class and lower income families, the ones who needed the most during the most challenging parts of the pandemic. But we didn't put this policy in place just for the pandemic. We put this policy in place because it's good policy to help families all the time. They use these payments to buy food. Doesn't get more basic than buying food, to pay for housing, clothes, diapers, and other necessities. And many parents that I've spoken to say the monthly checks really gave them breathing room, a sense of predictability, and really the opportunity to spend time being a parent. And I want to share one story with you in particular, a woman I talked to just recently, because I think it speaks at the heart of the impact of the child tax credit. I met Cherry. She's a mother of 4 kids, one of whom has a developmental disability that requires constant care. She works 3 jobs to be able to provide for her children. The monthly child tax credit payments allowed her to cut back some hours to be with her kids. It allowed her to bring in an aide to help care for her child, so she could spend more individualized time with her other children. The child tax credit allowed her to fence in her backyard so that the family service animal could have space back there, and to buy basketball shoes so her son could play on the school team. But the number one thing it did is, she said, it just gave me a little bit of time to be a parent, because otherwise I was spending all my time going from job to job. I didn't have time to be a parent. So now January comes, the check doesn't come anymore, and Cherry's life goes back to having to pick up those extra hours again, less time with her children. Her story is incredibly powerful, because this is what it's about. It's making sure our kids, that families, get off to a great start, and that great start gives us an incredible return in terms of the outcome for our kids, but it also saves us money. When we're talking about the financials here, our kids do better, our families do better, communities do better, the country does better. So definitely, she, like many parents, can claim the rest of their enhanced child tax credit when they file their taxes this year. And we're encouraging folks to file electronically and include their direct deposit information, because the IRS has said that it will be a complicated filing season for many this year, and we want them to get those dollars as quickly as possible. It's also how filers can claim their enhanced earned income tax credit from the American Rescue Plan. So even though the monthly child tax credit payments ended in December, it doesn't mean that we're done. I'm going to continue fighting for Cherry, for the millions of other parents and kids across the country who have seen the incredible benefit of the expanded child tax credit. I'm standing here with others who are fighting hard with me, and so grateful for the work that they've done, in particular grateful for the work of Senator Booker to help raise up families and fight poverty. And I'm going to introduce him and turn over to him next. Senator Booker.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. In a recent conversation with the President's Chief of Staff, he made it clear that but for this group, as Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro says, this group of this conspiracy of legislative heroism, this policy would not have gotten into the American Rescue Plan. I think that one of the big issues that's lying before us, the obvious elephant in the room, is the cost of the child tax credit. And to me, it's the worst of Washington math that we somehow are looking at the cost of this plan and not looking at the benefits, not only the clear net benefit, every dollar you spend in getting a child above the poverty line brings back 7, but really the cost of not renewing this and not making it a permanent plan doesn't face the clear moral reality is what is then the cost of hunger for millions of American children? What is the cost of poverty for millions of American children? We now know, because of this 1 year of doing it, that literally the brain development of children's and families receiving this, that brain of that child in this most fragile period flourishes. What's the cost to our country of not investing in the well-being of our children and removing the stress and strain from families? That cost is incalculable. And we are now, therefore, not just at an economic moment that is crystal clear, but we're also at a moral moment in our country. To me, this is a balance sheet decision. Invest in your children. It is the one investment we have always said, both sides of the aisle, all across America, that we believe that our children can bring about a better day. Well, it necessitates investing in them and their future. And this is, of all the things going on in Washington, proven the best investment we can make in the future of our country and the children who will determine it. I'm honored now to bring up someone who's a friend of mine, somebody who's been here a short time and has shown, like my other colleagues, his heroism in legislative efforts. I bring to you the Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock.
Thank you so much, Senator Booker. It's wonderful to be here with you and all of my colleagues. As Senator Booker has said in his own powerful way, extending this expanded child tax credit is not only the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. And I have found that to be true very often in our public policy, that more often than not, the right thing to do is a smart thing to do. And were it not for the politics of Washington, this would be a no-brainer. And so I just want to underscore that this is the largest tax cut in United States history for working and middle-class families. The largest tax cut in U.S. history for working and middle-class families. And so I want to ask, where are my fiscal conservatives? Where are the folk who are always arguing for tax cuts? Because the choice really is between those who want to raise your taxes, since this helps 97% of families with children, and those who want to cut your taxes. We want to give ordinary families a break. We want to give them an opportunity to thrive, because we know that when ordinary people thrive, the economy thrives also. Because when ordinary folks have a few extra dollars in a month, they buy, extravagant things like a coat for their kid, food. They put their kids in extracurricular activities. They do things that support and strengthen our economy. And so I've been hearing from families all across the state of Georgia, where we've gotten help to 1.2 million households across my state, benefiting the families of more than 2.1 million Georgia children. I've been hearing from them that this is an absolute lifeline. I'll just give you one story. One parent wrote to me recently about the CTC, and she said that because of the monthly payments, my family is now able to afford more things for the kids, such as taking field trips at school and just being able to provide for them throughout the month. She goes on to say that the kids are growing every day. So the child tax credit, I'm able to also, because of the child tax credit, I'm also able to get clothing and shoes for them as they grow and as they are needed, instead of waiting until income tax time. That's just one mom talking about the benefit of this tax cut. And so I hope that we will extend it. It's so very important. Finally, let me say that this is not theoretical stuff for me. Most poor people in America are children, and I was one of those kids. I grew up in public housing, and I would not be standing here in the United States Senate if it weren't for good federal public policy. I'm an Upward Bound kid, Pell Grants, Head Start. This gives all of our kids a head start. It's the right thing to do. It's a smart thing to do for these families and our economy.
Thanks, Reverend Warnock. Thank you, everybody. Are there any questions?
Thanks for doing this. So we've all talked about continuing to center child tax credit on negotiations for the reconciliation bill. What exactly does that look like in terms of negotiations? How are you going about ensuring that this will end up in the final reconciliation bill, considering that there is significant opposition not only on the Republican side, but with at least one Democratic senator as well?
Go ahead.
There is unfortunately unanimous Republican opposition every single time. The two times when Michael, originally Michael and Cory and then Raphael joined us when he came, legislation, we had 47 Democratic co-sponsors, including Senator Manchin. We've voted for it twice in 2021. Every Republican voted no. We continue. I have parts of my state that look just like parts of Senator Manchin's state. We continue to talk about this. He understands the importance of this to the great majority of families. I am still very optimistic because I know that he hears those stories as we hear those stories, and we know how important this is to kids. So we're never going to give up on this. I mean, Rose has been working on it for 19 now. It was 18, but this is 2022. Now 19 years, and so we're going to half that long, and we're going to continue to do it, and we're going to deliver on it.
Go ahead, Rosa.
I would just say that all of the questions that have been raised, we have been able to answer. All the studies demonstrate that people, including a recent one, that people have used this to get child care to go back to work, that it will help to lower the cost of inflation for families. The Reverend said that it's the right thing, it is the smart thing, it is achieving every goal that we set out to achieve. And we need to answer those questions for people who are skeptical. I, like my colleagues, are optimistic. The weight and the heft of this program and its transformative nature, in the same way social policy transformed this country in years past. That's what we are fighting for. That's what we are convincing our colleagues of. We're trying to do that. But it is the American public who believes that this is the right thing to do. And they need to have a voice and make that voice heard there. And that's something we're working on as well.
I would add, Senator Manchin has not slammed the door on this. We now know over the last 6 months that people have spent the money the way we said they were going to spend the money, which was to buy groceries, to pay for rent, really importantly to pay for child care so they could stay at work. There's no evidence at all that this is not a pro-work policy, which we believe that it is. And now, as Senator Booker mentioned, there's really significant brain data that shows how important it is for young people to get the kind of benefits that the child tax credit represents. Sure.
Does the availability of the refund for the first half of last year buy you time? The fact that people could get as much as $1,800 per child from the expanded child tax credit from last year, does that give you time to get this done this year, knowing that they'll have that money?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's better. It's certainly good to have that enhancement, but I think everybody up here knows how important this monthly credit has been. It's been a lifeline. And as Rosa said, before we passed this, there was nobody who thought the IRS could actually deliver this on a monthly basis. Now they have. It's extraordinary. Without adding bureaucracy, without hiring a bunch of people, they've been able to do exactly what they said they were going to do. So I do think there's real cost to people not getting it when their bills are due, and that's what we're trying to fight for. Yes.
I know Senator Manchin has repeatedly talked about work requirements for the child tax credit, but I know that all of you have said full refundability is very critical. Do you still want to move ahead with trying to do this and Build Back Better if you can't get him to agree with the full refundability portion?
Go ahead, Rosa.
No, I think we are going to try to make the arguments in the cases. I've sent material to Senator Manchin answering the questions that he has had, and legitimate questions to be asked. And we are not, throwing in the towel on this. We're going to keep going because the evidence, the continued evidence. Just recently, expanded child tax credits do not reduce employment, the study finds. So study after study, and the data is palpable that can demonstrate that we need to do that. The issue of work requirements, and I spoke to the senator about this. You're talking about disabled folks. You're talking about grandparents. About 6.1 million of our kids are in the arms of grandparents. What about single moms? We talk about what happens to them, or mothers who stay at home, and people want to have say that's better for the family. Well, then we have to make it better for the family in terms of moving forward on the expanded child tax credit. Senator?
I just want us to be mindful about how we talk about poor people. The scripture says, woe to those who crush the poor. And, it's interesting to me in these policy arguments, the double standard that gets put forward, and no one even challenges it. What are the work requirements for the tax cuts given to the richest of the rich in 2017? Where are those work requirements? Where's the means testing for extending them? This is a tax cut. It's just for ordinary people. And the moral question is, why is a tax cut good for those who need it the least, but not the right thing for those who need it the most? This is the right thing to do for our children. And I think it's just, it is that they don't have lobbyists. That's the difference. And we have to be their voice. And it's in our enlightened self-interest to do so, because we're talking about the future of the American workforce.
The work requirement, Reverend, is cutting coupons. That's the work requirement.
Joseph,
is cutting
I think we have
coupons.
time. Let's take these four really quickly, and then we got to get out of here.
Thank you for doing this and for taking my question. So your biggest obstacle to renewing this ETC in this reconciliation bill, obviously, Senator Joe Manchin. What do you all intend to do differently to sway somebody who hasn't really budged on this issue since last fall?
I'll take that. I think it's making the argument that Reverend Warnock just made and saying, unlike everything else that's been in this package, this has actually been delivered. It's actually worked. The last thing we're all worried, as he is, Joe Manchin is, about the issue of families facing inflation. This is the single most important thing that we can do to deal with that in the short term right now. And we want his partnership on this bill. We not everybody's going to like every single part of this bill. My argument with Senator Manchin is give us a chance to let this work. Let's see how it works over the next year. It's worked well over the last 6 months, and it's the most successful piece of domestic legislation that we've had in a long time. He has said he wants to start with a clean sheet of paper. There are things in here that I would love to do that we haven't done. I think we should be reversing the Trump tax cuts for the rich. We said we would do that. We should do that. And that we should use the proceeds of that to pay for some of this as well. So we'll see. As I said, I do not believe that he's slammed the door on this.
I have two questions. So the first one, do you guys think this is important enough to kind of strip from the Build Back Better bill or pass it, or do some work on the Build Back Better bill to make sure that it can pass definitely? And the second question is about the work requirement. Why was the decision made to take that out? Why is that? Why do you think that's a beneficial part to take out from this?
Well, the work requirement was never.
Go ahead,
The
Marissa.
work requirement was never. And I just add to what Senator Bennet said a moment ago. We're going to try to, people ask questions. We want the partnership of all of the Democrats and Senator Manchin and answering the questions. And again, the data over and over again supports some of the issues that he has concern about, and we're going to keep at that, and the American public is going to keep at that as well, in terms of bringing their voices to bear. Well, work requirements were never part of the legislation that we introduced, either in the House or in the Senate, because we understood that as Reverend Warnock pointed out, it is about demeaning people, and whether they're poor or they're middle class folks. And I said, they are living paycheck to paycheck. Everybody defines themselves by their job. We do, you do. They take pride in what they want to do. Most of the folks are working people. There are some who cannot work. They are disabled. I mentioned grandparents. Over 6 million kids whose grandparents are taking care of them. Moms at home. They want to work. They want to go to work because it defines who they are and their sense of pride in themselves and what it says to their families as role models in who they are. Let's stop demeaning working people and poor people, and let's understand, walk in their shoes, understand their lives, and be there with the social policies today, like we've had in the past, that have made a difference going forward. That is all this is. And maybe it is part of a new social safety net going forward. The same as family and medical leave and a child tax credit that deals with the way families are living today. And that is what is critical to this. It is the right thing, and it is the smart thing to do.
I think we had one more. I'll take these last two, and then we're out of here.
Thank you. I know in January when Senator Warnock was elected, the campaign was nationalized and saying, if you elect Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff, you're going to get your $1,400 stimulus check. I know Senator Booker, you were there campaigning on that. Is that something for 2022? If you elect these Democrats, we're going to, including Senator Warnock.
Listen, your question mistakenly assumes that this is about us. This is about the people of Georgia. This is about the American people. It's about ordinary folks. And so as we push this forward, we're thinking about the mom who is trying to buy a coat for her kid. We're thinking about the children who are food insecure and are sitting at a desk trying to learn. That's who we're trying to save. Thank you so much.
One last one here. Did you?
Just to follow up on some of the other questions about changes, would you guys be willing to change or lowering the income threshold on this? And then also, Senator Manchin has specifically said over and over again that talks around this are dead. Like, are there any negotiations happening on this currently, other than you guys calling for this to be brought back?
On the first part, I think we would all agree that we'd all be comfortable with the income level being lower than it has been. I certainly would. Our initial bill went up to $150,000. We're definitely open to having a conversation about that.
It was actually our Republican colleagues who
It
went
was
up
the
to
20
$400,000.
right. It was the 2017 bill that took it up to $400,000. So we'd be very comfortable with that. And then the second.
Senator Manchin's just been saying that talks around this idea.
Yeah, no, look, he said that about Build Back Better. He said, let's start with a clean sheet of paper. I don't actually have a problem with that. There's stuff about the House bill I don't love in terms of revenue. We should be reversing the Trump tax cuts to the rich. We should be extending the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. And I think that in that spirit, we all want to sit down with him and have this conversation. Let me say one last word about this, too. I was the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools before I was in this job, and most of the kids in that district were kids living in poverty. Their issue was not that their parents weren't working. Their parents were working 2 and 3 jobs. No matter what they did, they couldn't get their kids out of poverty. And it's true. This has been a lifeline because it's allowed people to pay the rent at the end of the month. That may sound rhetorical. That may sound like rhetoric. But if your mom or dad can't pay it, it means you're going to get evicted in the middle of your school year, and you may have to go to a different school. You know, the fact that parents this year were able to buy school clothes for their kids, I heard it over and over and over again in Colorado, without bankrupting their families for the first time, made a huge difference for working people, which is why, to me, it is so heartless and so cavalier that we are willing over and over again to extend the tax credits for the wealthiest people in the country, and we're not doing it for the biggest tax cut, as Reverend Warnock said, that working people have had in this country ever. And that's what we have to find a way to change.
Yeah, small point before we close. Just, I just, because I've heard it come from a number of different questions about this idea of a work requirement. And I'm a big believer in the dignity of work and the power that comes from that. But what's happening right now is we have a dignity stripping economic environment where you have a parent that works 2, 3 jobs and still is not making enough to provide for their family. We have a dignity stripping reality where we don't even see raising your children as work. When anybody who has kids knows how incredibly hard and time demanding that is. And so when you add those two together, one, that we don't value the work of raising children, of taking care of a sick parent, of dealing with someone with dementia, where we don't value that work or support it, and we don't value something as basic that is just human dignity to provide a living wage to people so they don't have to piece together 80 hours of work a week that then undermines their ability to raise their children as they would want to. We have an environment right now that is stripping the dignity of work away. And so I'm all for a work requirement, but for us as a society, understanding that work should pay a living wage and that we should value the work of those Americans who are taking care of a disabled child, taking care of an ill parent. That is dignified work as well.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you.
That was a more, the most forthright endorsement of a lower income threshold. I think so. That I have heard. Yeah. That was, there's a little movement there.
You're talking about the underlying credit, though, right? That's what I was assuming.
Huh?
The 200, 400,000, that's the underlying Trump tax credit.
Yes.
But yeah, you're right. There were a little bit.
Bennet has said that, but he was that time like, oh yeah, we would do that. That was a little bit more emphatic.
And we're not gonna pass the bill.
Yeah, they haven't really wanted to be gung ho about that.
Thanks, Scritch.
Hey.